In the diseased heart of Trench Crusade's infernal theatre, there lies many demons, from the heads of the serpent to even the lowliest yoke fiends. There are demons of all powers. Kings, dukes, princes, marquises. But how do they all fit into the hierarchy of hell? And what are their bases in real life? That is what we'll be getting into today, as we discuss the lore and real life histories of every demon mentioned in Trench Crusade and how they fit into the hierarchy of hell. We will start with those who have the most lore and then progress to those who have just been mentioned in name. But who else to start with than the Lord of Flies himself, Beelzebub, the fly-wreathed monarch of Ekron. In the infernal court of Trench Crusade, few figures loom as monstrously and meaningfully as Beelzebub. Known as the Lord of the Flies, he presides over a grotesque empire of pestilence, heresy, and spiritual rot. His sacred city of Ekron has become a hive of blasphemous activity, a necrotic wound in the flesh of creation, where the very air thickens with buzzing wings and the moaning of the damned. But Beelzebub is more than just a pestilent horror. He is a bridge between ancient Near Eastern theology and the horrifying spiritual imagery of Trench Crusade. In the warped and haunted mythos, Beelzebub is not merely a demon, but a living disease, the corrupter of flesh and the patron of the infamous Black Grail. His cultists, grotesquely swollen with infestation, serve not only as warriors, but as living altars of contagion. They are both vectors and vassals, moving colonies of flies in rotting human flesh, their bodies riddled with boils, and their mouths oozing sermons of blasphemous rebirth. And in this world, faith is not lost, it is infected. The Black Grail, which Beelzebub champions, represents more than simple heresy. It is an anti-sacrament, a twisted parody of communion. To partake of it is to allow one's soul to become host to a divine infection, a holy disease that transforms flesh and spirit into a new, monstrous state. This inversion of Christian sacraments, a blight masked as grace, is central to Beelzebub's role. His kingdom is a parody of heaven, a desecrated reflection of divine order. His throne, the city of Ekron itself, is described as a hellish metropolis where sacred rot blossoms. It is a site of unending decomposition, paradoxically teeming with life, but the wrong kind. Swarms of demonic flies serve as extensions of their master's will, witnesses to perverted liturgies and participants in infernal sacraments. The sanctity of death is corrupted here, not denied. The line between the corpse and the worshipper becomes indistinguishable. Beelzebub's followers speak of transformation, of becoming more than human. In truth, they are vessels for something far less, and yet their fervour is real. They are not mindless thralls, but true believers. This makes Beelzebub's cult all the more terrifying. They do not crave destruction, but rebirth in their master's new image. In this way, Beelzebub offers something profoundly seductive, a promise of purpose through surrender, of power through decay. And to fully understand the weight of Beelzebub's presence in the setting, one must trace his history across centuries of religious transformation. His earliest origins lies in the ancient Near East, where he was worshipped under the name Baal-zebub, meaning Lord of the High Place, or later, Lord of Flies. This god was venerated in the Philistine city of Ekron, a fact recorded in the Hebrew Bible. When King Ahaziah sends messengers to consult with Baal-zebub about his illness, the prophet Elijah rebukes this act as idolatry, marking Baal-zebub as an affront to the God of Israel. Jewish writers would later recast Baal-zebub as Beelzebub, transforming a regional deity into a demonic adversary. By the time of the New Testament, he appears as a major demonic figure. In the Gospel of Matthew, the Pharisees accuse Jesus of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of demons. This title, often translated interchangeably as Beelzebub, suggests that by the early Christian period, Beelzebub had become synonymous with Satan himself, or at least was one of his most powerful lieutenants. The transformation continued in medieval demonology. In grimoires such as the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum and the Dictionaria Infernal, Beelzebub is described as a prince of hell, often second only to Lucifer. His dominion includes not just pestilence, but pride, gluttony, and the ability to possess the bodies of the living. He is said to appear as a monstrous fly or a bloated figure, trailing the stink of decay, and he is often connected with the sin of gluttony, feeding without limit, and devouring without purpose. The association with flies is not incidental. In biblical and folkloric tradition, flies are linked to death, filth, and demonic presence. They are omens of corruption, living proof that something once holy or whole has decayed. In Beelzebub's case, they are both symbol and servant. Just as Beelzebub himself was once divine and now defiled, so too are flies transformed. Once creatures of the natural world, now agents of the profane. As in his history, in the Divine Comedy and Paradise Lost, Beelzebub was an angel, struck down with Lucifer in his rebellion. He became the demon sin of gluttony, which has continued on in Trench Crusade, with him being considered the head of the Ring of Gluttony, which is the 7th ring in Hell in Trench Crusade, but the 3rd ring of Hell in the Divine Comedy. Now, to put this into perspective into the hierarchy of Hell, this would put Beelzebub up at the top layer as a demon head, except he separates himself from the court of the 7-headed serpent and lets another go in his place, or leaves the throne empty. So he's at the power level of one of the 7 heads, but he is not one of them himself. Beelzebub is probably the most confusing to place in the hierarchy because he likes to separate himself from the rest of them. But he is on the same level as Mammon or Abaddon as the serpent heads of wrath and greed respectively. Which brings me on to the serpent head of greed, Mammon. In the Bloodslick factories and charred temples of Trench Crusade, Mammon reigns not with flame or fang, but with contracts and coin. He is not a demon of chaos, but a demon of the system. Terrible, relentless systems built on debt, dominion, and mechanized war. While the other lords of hell revel in sin and sacrilege, Mammon reduces both heaven and hell to a line item ledger. His gospel is capitalism turned apocalyptic, where every soul is a resource and every life a dividend. He is the embodiment of greed, not just as a sin, but as a logic, a theology, and a war machine. In the lore, Mammon manifests as a golden-clad tyrant who weaponizes the economy as effectively as any tank or artillery piece. He rules not through seduction or brute force, but through infrastructure, bureaucracy, and exploitation. His realm is one of factories fueled by heretical engines, cities that churn out weapons and soldiers like coin-stamped metal, and cults that trade flesh as currency. War itself is commodified under his rule. Conflict is not a tragedy or a necessity. It is an investment. The name Mammon finds its earliest roots in Aramaic, with mammona, meaning wealth or riches. It appears in the Christian Testament, particularly in the Gospel of Matthew, where it is said that you cannot serve both God and Mammon. Here, Mammon is personified, not simply as material wealth, but as a rival spiritual force, a false god that demands loyalty in place of the divine. In early Christian thought, Mammon is not just wealth, but wealth worshipped. Church fathers such as Augustine and Cyprian warn against the deification of possessions, To serve Mammon, they argue, was to abandon God entirely, to trade eternity for momentary luxury. By the Middle Ages, this concept evolved further. Mammon became increasingly demonized, often appearing in sermons as a devil who tempts men with gold and leads them to ruin. In literary works such as John Milton's Paradise Lost, Mammon is portrayed as a fallen angel, obsessed with the glittering treasures of hell, more interested in mining and construction than rebellion. He is the architect of hell's palaces, content to make a kingdom out of exile through industry and materialism. In later grimoires and demonological texts, such as the Dictionary Infernal and the Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum, Mammon is depicted as one of the princes of hell, governing over avarice and financial corruption. He is said to teach ways of acquiring wealth, to advise kings and merchants, and to seduce through the promise of luxury and economic power. What makes Mammon's portrayal in Trench Crusade so interesting is that it doesn't depart from tradition, it deeply expands upon it in a modern context. This Mammon is no longer whispering in the ears of misers or merchants. He is the architect of an entire socio-theological system. His factories do not merely produce goods, they create the very conditions of despair that drive people into his worship. His economy runs on spiritual deficit. Mammon in Trench Crusade is a demon of late-stage capitalism. The market has become a god. Warfare is privatized, corporations and cults blur together. His legions are not wild beasts, but workers, contractually bound, morally disarmed, and spiritually bankrupt. And worst of all, they believe that they are free. His cults resemble corporate boards more than covens. They speak of synergy, growth, and opportunity, even as they hollow out entire cities and enslave their populations. The irony is brutal. Mammon's worshippers are slaves who imagine themselves kings, rich only in illusion and bound by golden chains. And his greed knows no bounds. The majority of his territory in Trench Crusade lies over Egypt and most of northern Africa. He has done this, supposedly, to venture down to the Golden Empire of Mali to sack the riches that are there. His focus is purely on profit. He wishes for nothing more than power and wealth. For this reason, he has been the longest serpent head, claiming the head of the circle of greed for as long as there has been a head. He will never lose his power, for the greed that keeps him in power is only infused with more strength the longer he is there. The more he covets the position, the more strength he gains from it. He is on the same level as Beelzebub and the other serpent heads, and is currently one of the princes or kings of hell in the world of Trench Crusade. And, as in the Divine Comedy and Dante's Inferno, he is the leader of the fourth circle of hell, showing that the fourth circle in both Trench Crusade and real demonology is that of greed. Now we move on to Malak, the one that actually inspired me to make this video, because as I was reading the newest lore drop on the war calves of Malak, I thought, well, more so grew a fascination in how the hellish hierarchy works and the real life backstories to these demons that are shown in Trench Crusade. In the hellish battlefields and scorched wastelands of Trench Crusade, Malak stands as the dreaded titan of fire and blood, the merciless lord of sacrifice. Unlike Mammon's cold calculus or Beelzebub's creeping rot, Malak's domain is immediate, brutal, and volcanic. He demands offerings not in gold or whispers, but in flame and flesh. To Malak, the war is a holy furnace, the eternal sacrament, where souls are cast into the inferno to fuel his insatiable hunger for destruction and obedience. They burn cities and conscript children, offering human lives to stoke his infernal forge. Malak followers believe that only through sacrifice can victory be won. Only through fire can purity be attained. His followers willingly feed him the agony of those who have been captured, believing it will give them power and everlasting life. But the more they sacrifice to Moloch, the shorter the power they get in return. This leads to them feeling they need to sacrifice even greater numbers to retrieve the awards they once had. This Moloch is the serpent head of envy, a leader in the hierarchy of hell. And in the real world, the figure of Moloch has roots in the ancient Near Eastern religions, appearing in biblical texts as a Canaanite god associated with child sacrifice. The Hebrew Bible repeatedly condemns the worship of Moloch, particularly the practice of passing children through the fire. This phrase is widely interpreted as a reference to ritualistic sacrifice by fire, a horror abhorred by Israelite religion. Moloch's exact nature is debated by scholars, but he is generally seen as a deity requiring extreme offerings, often involving the sacrifice of children or youths, as a means of securing favor or divine blessing. These horrific rituals made Moloch a symbol of cruelty, barbarianism, and spiritual corruption, an antithesis to the mercy and justice of the Hebrew God. In post-biblical tradition, Moloch's image expanded into a metaphor for any system of ideology that devours its own people. The prophet Jeremiah lamented the valley of slaughter, where children were sacrificed to Moloch, symbolizing a society's moral collapse. In later Christian demonology, Moloch became a demonic figure representing tyranny, destruction, and insatiable appetite. The demonological grimoires and occult texts, such as the Dictionary Infernal by Colin de Plancy, cast Moloch as a fiery demon demanding human blood and souls. He is sometimes depicted as a horned idol or a giant with a bull's head, reinforcing his association with sacrificial rites and animalistic ferocity. In the world of Trench Crusade, to activate the goetic magic that gives the heretic forces such an advantage over the faithful, sacrifices are given to the demons of the seven-headed serpent, and none value them more than Moloch. He demands the sacrifice of all that he can reach, to gain their power, to use it for his own. He envies the living, for they live in God's world. He gives powers to his followers, and make them envy more power, to fall further under his corruption. His place as one of the course of the seven-headed serpent heads gives him the same level as that of Beelzebub and Mammon, and he was the most recently discovered one. Now, he is the serpent head of envy, but we do not know which ring in Trench Crusade is the ring of envy. But the Divine Comedy doesn't have a ring of envy. You could put it in with greed or pride, which would not make sense because greed is Mammon. So this is where it shows the difference between the Divine Comedy and the Hell in Trench Crusade. If there's a demon head of envy, then it seems obvious that it is following the 7 deadly sins. But those are not the sins that are followed in the Divine Comedy. So Hell in Trench Crusade being divided into these 7 rings is the 7 layers of hell, each one respective of a cardinal sin. So we do not know Moloch's place in the physical hierarchy of hell, but we do know he is a prince of hell. As the head of envy, he has the same power as Beelzebub and Mammon, and rules over the lesser demons in his circle. Another interesting one was Abaddon, who is the current head of Wrath. Now, Abaddon is presented as one of the most fearsome princes of hell in Trench Crusade, a demon not merely of fire and blood, but of strategic fury and unrelenting siege. He is the patron of heretic warlords who endlessly assail the fortress of Alamut, the mountainous stronghold of the assassins. Their goal is to take the fortress, and in doing so, receive the ultimate infernal reward of eternal youth, promised by Abaddon himself. This diabolical pact is one of the few consistent legends repeated across decades of warfare. Every heretic warlord who marches against Alamut has done so under Abaddon's promise, immortality and unaging strength. It is a cruel irony, then, that Alamut is protected by a mysterious temporal magic that causes attackers to rapidly age, rendering the demon's reward eternally out of reach. Thus, Abaddon's temptation becomes a curse. The closer one gets to victory, the more one is drained of life. Abaddon's wrath is cold and calculated. He is not a wild berserker, but an intelligent siege master, a figure of bureaucratic malevolence. The annals tell us that while his legions have encircled Alamut for generations, they have never succeeded. Time and time again, his promises lure new champions, and time again, they fall, destroyed not only by cannon and blade, but by the fortress itself. Despite these defeats, Abaddon never ceases. His wrath is eternal, and as is his ambition. He is the architect of a war that will never end, a demonic figure not simply of destruction, but of futility and obsession. The name Abaddon originates in the Hebrew Bible, where it refers to a realm of destruction, a place within Sheol, the underworld, where the dead are lost beyond redemption. In Job and Proverbs, Abaddon is a poetic name for the grave, sometimes translated as the abyss. But in the book of Revelations, Abaddon is no longer a place, but a personified force. Later, theological interpretations are split. Some regard Abaddon as a servant of God, a punisher of the unfaithful. Others reimagine him as a prince of hell, an enemy of heaven, and in some demonological texts, he becomes a destroyer, an angelic executioner of the damned. Medieval Christian mystics and occultists often listed him among the chief demons of destruction and plague. His place in the infernal hierarchy is once again that serpent head, the serpent head of wrath. Though this one changes hands a lot, apparently, Abaddon finds himself at the same level of that of Beelzebub, Mammon, and Moloch, and makes the fourth of the serpent heads that we know of. Now, this is interesting, as usually, when it comes to wrath, Satan or Baal are the heads of the Ring of Wrath in the Divine Comedy, or in other demonological texts. So to have a demon that's much lesser known, like Abaddon, as the head of wrath shows the fluidity of control in hell. It changes on a dime. So I believe wrath makes the most sense, as well as pride, as to have the most change in heads. And that's why we don't see Satan as the ruler of wrath in this world. We also don't know which ring wrath is, I believe. At least I don't see it here in my research. But in the Divine Comedy, it is the fifth ring. So we will see when more information is revealed on hell which ring it coincides with, whether it's the Divine Comedy or its own ring. Now, from here on, we dive into the lower ranking demons, as those four are the only serpent heads that we know of at this time. The heads of pride, sloth, and lust are still unknown, but I'm sure they'll be revealed soon. But next, and most influential, is Marbus, the infernal engineer of the depths. In the Trench Crusade universe, demons do not simply haunt the spiritual periphery, they take part in the brutal machinery of the apocalyptic war. One such figure, mentioned briefly but meaningfully, is Marbus. According to the annals of the church history, in the year 1866, in the utmost secrecy, heretic scientists, aided by the demon Marbus, construct the first modern submarines. This positions Marbus as a patron of underwater dread, a demon whose gifts allow men to hide from heaven beneath miles of pressure and salt. Submarines in this lore are not merely machines, they are heretical vessels, fusions of steel and sin. Marbus' involvement sanctifies this corruption of purpose, While other demons may infect flesh or corrupt faith, Marbus corrupts ingenuity itself. When compared to his real-world counterpart, the connection deepens. In occult grimoires, such as the Lemmicaton and the Pseudomonarchia Demonum, Marbus is listed as a powerful demon, sometimes appearing as a great lion, associated with revealing secrets, engineering, and mechanics. He is said to govern knowledge of hidden things, diseases, and machinery. Most notably, he is described as possessing the ability to transform men, heal them, or make them ill, offering a dual nature of construction and destruction. While the Trench Crusade version strips away many of the classical associations with healing or shapeshifting, it retains his identity as a mechanist and revealer of secret knowledge. In fact, it weaponizes it. The submarines of 1866 are not miracles of science. They are sins made of steel, born of whispered blasphemies between man and demon. Thus, Marbus, in Trench Crusade, is a perfect example of how the setting reinterprets traditional demonology through the lens of total war. His gifts are not freely given. They lead humanity deeper into the abyss, literally and spiritually, beneath the waves. In the dark cold of forgotten oceans, Marbus crafts the future of damnation in bolts and rivets. Now, the next one I found was Satan. This was only mentioned in a Discord message, but it said that Satan is a part of a triumvirate between Beelzebub and Lucifer, meaning he is definitely within the world. But where? I believe he has to be a prince of something, because Satan is obviously such a huge demonological figure. But if he's not the Prince of Wrath, then what is he? In Abrahamic tradition, Satan is the adversary of God, often depicted as the embodiment of pride, rebellion, and evil. While not originally a proper name, Satan, which is Hebrew for accuser, evolved into the ultimate tempter and the enemy of humanity in Christian theology. I believe he probably holds an equally powerful role in the world of Trench Crusade. Maybe he is even a step higher than a prince. Maybe he is the king of hell. But I believe that idea has been dissuaded and disproved. But I can't wait to hear more about him, because him not being the demon head of wrath is quite surprising to me. Next being Lucifer, another one who I expected to have a lot more lore about. But all we know is that he is also part of the triumvirate of Beelzebub and Satan. He could be the Prince of Pride. I would believe that would make sense. Except, if that's the case, why hasn't he already been mentioned? Now, Lucifer is by far one of the most popular demons of all time. We all know him as the Lightbringer, the fallen angel, Lucifer Morning Star. Over time, the Christian interpretation merged Lucifer with Satan, and casting both of them as a similar person or the same fallen angel who was cast out of heaven for their pride. We all know Paradise Lost and the story of how Lucifer rebelled in his arrogance and pride, thinking he could best God, and was cut down with a third of his angels. It seems in Trench Crusade this rebellion happened as well. So where is Lucifer? Is he simply the Prince of Pride, or is he, again, a greater power, like Satan, perhaps? Or are they going to be the same thing? They can't, because they're in a triumvirate, but I assume they're going to be very similar characters. Another character from Hebrew lore is that of Lilith. Now, Lilith was the first wife of Adam, and ran away from the garden, as she refused to submit and left Eden. She was later demonized as a child-snatching night spirit, and she represents female independence and dark motherhood. And in Trench Crusade, only mentioned in the Discord, was that she has her own cult. They're referred to as the midwives of Lilith, and they're the ones who rip the human-like face off the infant praetors. So she clearly exists, and I assume her rank would be pretty high. In a lot of media, she falls in love with Lucifer, so perhaps something along those lines might occur, and she might be the wife of Lucifer, and has the same power as either a demon head or possibly higher. Another one that I'm surprised about, and not being mentioned yet, is Leviathan. They have no specified rank currently. I was expecting them to maybe be the Prince of Envy, as that's what they are in the Divine Comedy and in other demonological texts. But now we know that Maluk, being the Prince of Envy, where does that leave Leviathan? There was a proposed story mission about Operation Leviathan that mentioned that Leviathan was imprisoned somewhere in no man's land, and that the heretics attempted to break its chains. Some Naval Raider concept art also had his insignia, so more than likely he is a patron to the heretic navy. I'd assume he is also of a high enough power level, and maybe along this level of the heads, or maybe just a bit below that. He could be a Prince of Hell, or maybe under that, but I don't think he will be one of the most powerful demons, especially if he has been imprisoned in no man's land. Leviathan is a sea serpent who symbolizes chaos, often depicted as one of the primordial monsters that God defeats. In demonology, he is associated with the sin of envy and overwhelming desire. Now, if you look on the map, there are sea monsters in the seas, but this could just be a nod to the way maps were drawn with sea monsters in unknown territory, or it could be a reference to Leviathan, but we don't know yet. Another one who is mentioned is Baphomet. He's the patron of the Heretic Legion and the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent. He doesn't have a specified rank. It says that Baphomet has countless children. Due to their hermaphroditic nature, they can reproduce by themselves. Baphomet was first mentioned in the context of the Knights Templar, accused of worshipping a pagan idol. Eliphas Levi later popularized the goat-headed hermaphroditic image, symbolizing balance of opposites and occult enlightenment. Another popular demon that has been mentioned in Trench Crusade is that of Paimon. Now, he has been given the title of an Archduke of Hell. He has or had a servant who is or was the Lord Mechanic of the Goetic Forges in the Third Circle. But Paimon is more commonly known from the Ars Goetia. He is a king of hell, known for his knowledge of all sciences and control over spirits, and teaching of secret things. He was also in the film Hereditary, so if the name is familiar, that's probably how you know him. But he is clearly an important force in Trench Crusade if he is still known as a demon of all sciences, since he would definitely be helping out with the mechanical efforts of the hellish forces. Now, Baal is also mentioned and given the name of an Archduke of Hell. He is the patron of the Heretic Legion and the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent. Baal was a major Canaanite god of fertility and storms, and later was reinterpreted by Christians as a demonic figure. He is also mentioned in the Ars Goetia. Baal is a king who commands legions of demons and appears in various animal forms. Firstborn infants are cast into the burning mouths of his statues in heretic territory. Beleth, also an Archduke of Hell, he has major importance when it comes to the training of the Death Commandos. In demonological grimoires, Beleth is a terrible and mighty king riding a pale horse. He is often accompanied by a dreadful procession and governs over 85 legions of spirits, as an invoked in love-related spells, ironically enough. So Beleth must be powerful in hell, being an Archduke, and having such command over the Death Commandos. Beruth is a great Duke of Hell. He is the patron devil of the Death Commandos, and is a rival of Mammon, and that's why he will not let Mammon hire any of the Death Commandos. Beruth may be a variation or corruption of Beleth or Berith. In demonology, Berith is a powerful duke who is a great liar and manipulator, often consulted for divination and blasphemous contracts. Eligius is a great Duke of Hell, and he took a huge loan from the Bank of Mammon to buy a robot army from the Third Circle of Hell. He's the one currently invading the Italian peninsula and holds Venice. Eligius is a warrior from the Ars Goetia, riding a horse and carrying a lance. He reveals secrets of war, strategy, and hidden desires, and commands legions of spirits. So clearly in Trench Crusade he's kept that up with the massive robot army. Balaam is also mentioned as an Archduke of Hell. He is the patron of the Heretic Legion and the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent. He is the devil of avarice, idol worship, and immortality, so he would be under Mammon in the Ring of Greed. Balaam is described in the Ars Goetia as a powerful king with 3 heads, a man, a bull, and a ram. He teaches cunning and invisibility, and his voice is said to be harsh and commanding. Zephyr was also mentioned. He is mentioned as another great Duke of Hell. Zephyr is a demon who specializes in seduction, making women fall in love and causing infertility in men. He appears in red armor and is among the more lust-oriented demons of the Goetia. This means he is almost definitely under the circle of lust, and serves whoever the demon head of lust will be. Geeson is mentioned as another great Duke of Hell, likely a variant of Gusoin from the Lemegeton. He teaches all liberal sciences and can make one exalted in dignity. Little is known about him beyond his rank and skills as a scholar, so he might be in the second ring of hell with the other demon philosophers. Astaroth, another great Duke of Hell, is derived from the Phoenician goddess Astarte. In demonology, he is a male Duke of Hell, riding a dragon and holding a viper. He encourages laziness and rationalizes sinful behavior. This would place him pretty safely into sloth, whenever that one is revealed. Visago is a prince of hell. He is a patron of the cult of the Black Grail. He is known as a good-natured demon in the Ars Goetia, who reveals hidden things and past events. He is considered a less malevolent, and sometimes is invoked for finding lost objects. Marcosius is a Marquis of Hell. His death commandos destroyed the fortress monastery of Velahrad in Greater Moravia, where the original shrine anchorites were built, and he is a powerful Marquis in the Ars Goetia. Marcosius appears as a wolf with griffin wings and a serpent tail. He is once part of the Angelic Order of Dominions, and hopes to return to heaven after 1,200 years. Whether this is the same in Trench Crusade is yet to be seen. This would be very interesting to see a demon whose objective is to return to heaven, not to merely destroy it. Sabnok is another Marquis of Hell, and controls the forges which produce Ophidian rifles for the court. Sabnok builds towers, fortifications, and arms men for war, closely linking him to military infrastructure. He often appears as a soldier on a horse, and exemplifies the demonic embodiment of wartime logistics. In the Ars Goetia, he is specifically noted for constructing towers, castles, and cities, while also supplying weapons. Safe to assume they have very strong ties to Hell's war industry, perhaps placing them in greed or wrath. Chimaris is a Marquis of Hell, and his legions were the ones that conquered Constantinople. Chimaris rides a black horse and commands around 20 legions. He teaches grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and is often associated with aiding in locating hidden treasure and military victories. I feel Chimaris probably falls under greed or wrath, much like the other one. Andromedus is an Earl of Hell, the Autoflenser, head of the Temple of Metamorphosis. He and his followers were the ones who discovered the doorway that the temple now worships. A lesser-known demonic Goetic demon, Andromedus returns stolen goods and punishes thieves and fraudsters. He is depicted with a serpent, and is also associated with truth and justice, a strange inversion for a demon. He appears insectoid in their concept art. He flayed himself in order to make room for the metamorphic vector. Zimnyar is the devil of the north, and seeks to become the serpent head of pride to conquer the northern lands of Earth. Though we don't know who the serpent head of pride is currently, my bet is still on Lucifer, I believe this will be a very interesting and important part of the Trench Crusade lore. Zimnar is one of the 4 cardinal kings of Hell, and represents the north in the Grimoirium Verum. He is one of the chief rulers under Lucifer, and is rarely invoked due to his terrible power. Enlil is an infernal noble of the Order of the Fly. Enlil was a major Mesopotamian storm and wind god, not traditionally considered a demon. He was repurposed as hell nobles in Trench Crusade, and this mirrors how ancient deities were often demonized by later religions. Coronazon is a demon major and a lord mechanic of the Goetic Forge. The church deployed a paladin to assassinate this demon, so it's very unlikely to still be alive. This could be the underling of Paimon, and I think it's heavily implied if there's a paladin sent after him, he's not alive anymore. Coronazon is a chaotic and destructive demon from the writings of John Dee and Aleister Crowley. He guards the abyss and represents the fragmented ego, delusion, and madness that prevents spiritual enlightenment. Succoth Benoth is another demon that has been mentioned, though he has an unknown rank, but is presumably lower than Baphomet. He is a popular patron to the heretic priests and a spawn of Baphomet. He really enjoys lighting things on fire. He grants his followers twisted eloquence and wisdom, which allows them to dominate their fellow man. The magics he teaches warps both mind and body. He demands the eyes and intestines of captured demons and animals be sacrificed to him. This, I'd say, pretty safely puts him into Wrath. And being the spawn of Baphomet, who is also in Wrath, would make sense. Mentioned in Kings, Succoth Benoth is an obscure deity worshipped by the Babylonians. Later occult writers imagined him as a demon or minor god of perversion and debasement, possibly female or androgynous. Pazuzu has also been mentioned, but also of an unknown rank. He appears to have at least one heretic legion dedicated to them, and their legion is currently located near Trebizond. Pazuzu is a Mesopotamian wind demon, known from Assyrian and Babylonian mythology. Though malevolent, he also is invoked to protect from other evil spirits, especially to ward off Lamashtu, who harms pregnant women. A fun fact is this guy was also featured in The Exorcist. Nifiniel is another demon mentioned of unknown rank. Elements of the heretic naval fleet are sworn to him. Nifiniel doesn't appear in known demonological texts, suggesting an original creation or an obscure variant of a lesser demon. The suffix El implies angelic or divine origin. Perhaps he's another fallen angel. This brings an end to all the demons mentioned in Trench Crusade so far. I never thought that this video would cause me to tier list the demons of Trench Crusade, but here we are. I believe that's all that we have of information from them for now. I look forward to them hopefully ever fleshing out if I'm in any way correct with this. This was just a sort of fun video. I had the idea of how actually does hell work in Trench Crusade? What are the ranks? We hear Archdukes, we hear Great Dukes, Marquis, lower ranks, heads and princes and all these things, but where do they actually fit into the lore? So hopefully this hasn't just been a rambling mess and you understand a bit more about the demons of Trench Crusade, their historical backgrounds, and where they fit into the hierarchy of hell now. This was definitely one of my less scripted videos, and I'm sure you could tell. It's more so research and just fitting together their Trench Crusade version and where they would fit in the hierarchy, which I sort of have mapped out in my mind, but I can't really put into paper yet. I will hopefully later on, when we know who has allegiances to who, be able to make a more detailed thing than just a tier list. And then I'll be able to fully explain the hierarchies of hell. Hopefully by then we'll also have the reveals of the other 3 serpent heads that haven't been revealed yet. But I hope you've enjoyed this video nonetheless. If you want more of this sort of less scripted styled thing, let me know in the comments. If not, let me know in the comments. I certainly found it to be very interesting to make because I usually rely heavily on my scripts. But hey, if you enjoyed this more free-form content, yeah, I'd be happy to do more in future. Now, Very interesting news on my end. This was received by me when I made the Era video. I noticed in my Discord that I had a friend request, and I was very confused as to who this could be. I looked in, and it was none other than Thomas Piernan, one of the writers for Trench Crusade. Imagine my shock. I saw that he had sent me a few days after I had released the Era video, which has now been the 14th of June, nearly a month ago. I released that video. 12 days later, Thomas Piernan sent me a friend request and a notebook full of his own notes of lore snippets and lore extra things that fit in to the world of Trench Crusade, entirely relating to the Irish invasion. I tell you, when I saw this, I was very much I was blown away by the fact that he had actually come out and said that he enjoyed my video and thought I might appreciate his lore notes. Yes, I do. I very much appreciate it. This led to a conversation I had with him when I finally noticed that he had sent this to me, which took an embarrassing 5 days. I didn't really check my Discord for a while. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry, Thomas, if you're watching this. But yeah, we had a great conversation with lots of lore being dropped. Also very interesting lore that I will happily share to you if you want to see that. It wouldn't really be a video per se. Well, it would obviously be a video, but it wouldn't be a structured video. It would just be me telling you these interesting lore snippets that I have found, including the first ever mentions of what's going on in the New World in America. The first time I believe this has been properly, or the first time I've seen mention of it, and it's from Thomas Piernan's notes to me. I would love to share them with you. I've obviously asked his permission if I can, and he said I'm free to. So if you want that, comment it down below. I will happily do a video on it. It will be a bit all over the place because we had a discussion that went from Era's lore, how it relates to history, confirmed the thing that it was very closely tied to Cromwell's invasion. I knew I was right. Thank you. Went from that to France, to Ultima Thule, to the New World, to a bunch of different history of Trench Crusade, and I would be so happy to share that with you in a future video whenever I figure out a proper way to make it entertaining to tell you guys, instead of just basically showing you a giant text log and reading out what we said to each other. But yeah, if you'd be happy to see that, let me know. Leave a like on the video, comment, and subscribe. I don't really know how to end off this video because it has been such a weird one. But hey, I hope you enjoy. It is very long now, and 58 minutes. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to cut this down a bit. But yeah. I noticed you guys also really enjoyed my video on the Forever Winter, which I'm very glad you did because I love that game. I've been playing it a lot recently. So I'll be making more lore videos on that and releasing them in time, going into each of the factions, much like I did with Trench Crusade. Anyway, that is all for now. I will see you guys in the next video, and I hope you have enjoyed.